we will start this meeting with Gary Jenkins leading us in prayer and in the pledges. Gary, if you'd please come forward. And Marcella, his much better half.
Amen, Mayor. Good morning, everybody. I'll just say hi. Will you join with me in a word of prayer? Dear Lord, we bow before you to say thank you for this opportunity to come before your presence here at the San Angelo City Council. We thank you for blessing us to live in the best city in the entire world, San Angelo, Texas. And we thank you, Father, for the leadership of this city. We thank you for our mayor. We thank you for the honorable members of the San Angelo City Council and for all of the officers that are here and even each and every one that's here from the public. We pray that you guide us and help the council members conduct the business of this city with excellence as unto you. We pray that you continue to protect us from COVID-19 and that, Father, that hopefully these vaccines that are out now being developed will be distributed soon and that COVID-19 will be a thing of the past in the near future. We thank you, Father, for each and every one that's here, and we pray that what is said and done will be pleasing in your sight. In Jesus' name, amen.
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you very much. Today we have one proclamation. It is a proclamation of San Angelo Reads Day. Do I have anyone in the audience who is here to receive? If so, please come forward. Good morning. How are you today? Good to have you all. Thank you. Good morning. San Angelo ISD is committed to building the literacy skills of the children of San Angelo and to instill a passion for reading in every student. As part of this commitment, SAISD is partnering with the City of San Angelo, the San Angelo Area Foundation, and other community groups on a community-wide literacy initiative to focus on the importance of literacy called San Angelo Reads. SAISD administrators, principals, and educators are focusing on this initiative in schools together with comprehensive literacy programs. SISD invites the San Angelo community to join in and get to reading. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, and together with San Angelo Independent School District administrators, principals, educators, staff, and students, do hereby recognize December 9th, 2020 as San Angelo Reads Day, and urge all citizens in San Angelo, Texas to acknowledge the occasion of this day in celebration of the importance of literacy and of instilling a passion for reading in our youth. Thank you all. May I present you with this, and would you all like to have a moment to speak? Please.
We just want to thank the mayor and the city of San Angelo for partnering with us on this very important initiative. We are so excited to have something wonderful to celebrate and to really work with our students and celebrate all of the wonderful literacy programs that we have going on in our schools. So we thank you and we look forward to y'all joining with us, and mark your calendars for December 9th and keep an eye out for the wonderful things we have going on. And then I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Jana Ritter, and she will talk a little bit more about it. Thank you.
So much. And again, we thank you, Mayor, and the City Council and the leaders of this great community. And we just really understand the importance of literacy, and with all that we're doing in our school district to focus on literacy in our classrooms, we want to extend this even further into our community and have this be a focus that isn't just on December 9th, but that this carries out throughout our community forever. And this is something you'll be seeing. We have a great logo developed. We'll be rolling out on December 9th. And you will see this all over the community, and we'll have businesses participating and individuals who will also be helping with not just the rollout, but also throughout carrying this out through our community and reading to students and participating in promoting literacy across San Angelo. And we would like to, this is Janet Karcher from San Angelo Area Foundation, and I'd like her to say a few words as well. We have a book here by Linda Thorson Bond, San Angelo A to Z, A Young Reader's Guide to San Angelo. And the Area Foundation has so graciously made available to every single third grader in our school district across San Angelo ISD, their own copy of this book. So we will be giving these to our students on December the 9th, and they will also be available for purchase, and we'll have more information about that rolling out in the community as well. But it's a great opportunity to celebrate San Angelo and the literacy that's so important to our community.
Dr. Ritter, and thank you to Mayor Gunter and the City Council for the opportunity to speak. San Angelo A to Z has been a project a year in the making. Nobody could have predicted COVID when we were trying to get these into the hands of students. As most of you probably know, a lot of students probably don't have books at home. And so this is an opportunity for us to extend the generosity that we have in our community from supporters and donors who this is a local author, and all the photos are obviously from local photographers. It's a beautiful book. It features things in our community that make us unique, and I think that's what's so great about San Angelo is we have a lot of opportunity to offer students, not only, in third grade, starting in third grade, but, a love for a community. A lot of students, we encourage them to come back after they leave San Angelo, and there's a lot of, interesting facts in here. Part of it is in Spanish as well, which is fantastic. So we just appreciate the opportunity to partner with the school district. Our supporters really, understand the importance of literacy in our schools, and we're just thankful for the opportunity and to get to launch this with the program that they're doing alongside. We didn't really know what it was going to look like, but we appreciate the hard work that the school district has done, and hopefully the city will embrace this initiative, and we'll have a lot of children reading in our community. So thank you.
It's your eyes. It's your eyes, girls. I also want to make mention of, you see Tommy Hebert on the screen. He is participating in our city council meeting this morning via Zoom. So even though he's not in his chair up here, he is with us. So thank you, Tommy, for being here today. We will move into item 4 on our agenda, and that is public comment. If you choose to come forward on public comment, please state your name and address or SMD. Each citizen can speak just once per item unless asked to comment by council. Public comment, 3 minutes unless extended by council or translation services. Proponent or opponent may have 5 minutes unless extended by council or translation services. Council has no obligation to respond to comments or questions from the public. Any response from a member of the City Council to non-agenda comments is limited to a statement of specific factual information, recitation of existing policy, and directing staff to place the subject on a future agenda. I am going to make some comments this morning, and then I will open up the floor for any additional comments from someone in the audience today. Citizens, We need to understand the impact of the continuing rise in cases. Our health care workers, those on the front line, are worn out emotionally and exhausted from the stress of taking care of the COVID-19 patients. They deserve our respect. For those of you who refuse to believe this is not a real pandemic, you should spend a week doing what our frontline medical staff is seeing and experiencing daily. Our hospitals are low on staff and are requesting additional support from the state. But we are not the only city needing additional staff. Last week, the number of people tested went up to 5,195 people from the previous week of 3,941 people. The positivity rate increased to 24.6%, up from 17.2%, with 1,283 new positive cases. Our hospitalizations went from 63 on Friday to 78 over the weekend to 83 on Monday. As it relates to where the COVID cases are coming from by age, let me share the following. Ages 0 to 19 on 11/6 were 128 cases. On 11/13, 195 new cases. The 20 to 29 age category from 137 to 262. The 30 to 39 went from 142 cases to 227. The 40 to 49 from 83 to 145. From the 50 to 59, 68 to 166. From 60 to 69, 69 to 128. And the 70 plus from 49 to 160. The two single biggest areas of increased cases was in the 20 to 29 and the 30 to 39 age category. Yes, of course, the number of positive cases will not require hospitalizations. Yes, of course, the majority of positive cases will not have long-lasting health issues. But the more positive cases, the more hospitalizations. Our surrounding communities have run out of beds. Trauma patients picked up by air ambulance no longer have options for which hospital they want to go to because our surrounding cities have hospitals with no beds. The numbers tell the story. Community spread. Can the hospital keep increasing the number of beds for COVID-19 patients? Yes, they can, as long as they have additional staff, which is a problem. They need staff. Can the hospital keep increasing the number of beds for COVID-19 patients? Again, the answer is yes, as long as the beds are available and not being used for flu patients or other medical issues such as heart attacks. Citizens, we need your help. This community has the ability to stop the spread if each of you, every citizen, makes a decision to be a part of stopping the spread. Each of you has a responsibility to be a part of the solution. Respect your family, your friends, your neighbors. Respect your healthcare workers. Community spread is happening in our living rooms, in our homes, in our backyards, and at social gatherings. Please be a part of the solution, not the problem. As a community, we must respect each other enough to do that. If we all work together, we can change the numbers. If we all support each other, we can change the trend. Support the businesses who are enforcing the CDC guidelines. Our business community should not have to be the enforcement team, but are put in a position to do so because as citizens, too many people refuse to respect others and take the responsibility to protect themselves and in the process protecting others. I don't know of anyone who enjoys wearing a mask. San Angelo, we need to be a united city. San Angelo, we need you as citizens to help. Thank you. Do I have anyone in the audience who would like to offer public comment today? Okay, you'll do it on the regular agenda when the item comes up. But thank you for asking. We will now move into the consent agenda. I will ask each council member if there's an item that they would like to have pulled for discussion. Billie?
Yes, Mayor. I would like to pull item H, item I, and item O.
Okay. Lane? Lucy?
No, ma'am.
Harry?
No, ma'am.
And Tom?
No, ma'am.
Tommy? Okay, thank you. We will then entertain a motion for approving the consent agenda with the exception of items H, I, and O. Is that correct, Billie?
That's correct.
Okay.
I
So-
make that motion, Mayor, to
Thank you. And a
approve the rest
second?
of the agenda.
Second by Lucy. Any public comment on any other agenda, consent agenda items? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of passing the motion to approve the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, it passes 7-0. We will now go to item H, which is consider authorizing the city manager to execute an interlocal agreement with Tom Green County providing for mental health unit MHU services with associated costs not to exceed $120,391 for the fiscal year. Welcome.
And Mayor, would you read item I, because they kind of go together?
Sure I will, of course. Consider authorizing the city manager to execute an interlocal agreement with Tom Green County providing for crisis intervention unit, CIU, services with associated costs not to exceed $36,045 for fiscal year 2021.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, Chief Howard.
Good morning.
The reason that I pulled these two items is, you know, recent events that are in the national news have identified the need in, you know, some cases to have trained people in mental health issues. And when I read this on the agenda, it struck me as something that, you know, our general public may not be aware that San Angelo is ahead of the game and that we're already doing this. So the reason that I pulled these two items, item H and item I, is so that we could have a chance to, you know, communicate to individuals that may not know that we have these services available in San Angelo. And a question that I'd like for you to address also is, are our officers, when they go through their orientation, do they receive training in what to do when, you know, there is either a known or unknown mental health crisis that they identify once they get on scene? Are they trained in that?
Yes, ma'am, they are. We do in-service training yearly on dealing with people that are in crisis, and the city has been in agreement with Tom Green County for the mental health unit services and the crisis intervention unit services for a number of years. It goes back probably 8 to 10 years, and it's a budgeted item each year. For example, the mental health unit, the county agrees to provide 5 deputies and 1 supervisor, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. They respond to incidents. If we're dealing with somebody in mental crisis, they'll respond to suicidal, homicidal subjects, mentally ill. They will, provided that there's the time and the opportunity for these calls, they'll come and they'll take the person and get them to the appropriate facilities or get them the appropriate help that they need. Sometimes it's just somebody that needs somebody to talk to. And our officers they use this avenue a lot. They keep officers free to answer other calls for service. So it's a benefit to the city and to the public. So.
And that's the way I see it too. And like I said, I just, you know, wanted to get that communication, you know, more widely spread because, you know, a lot of people don't read our agenda and know, you know, how we invest our funds. And so I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm glad that we're doing this and that we have been. Oftentimes we talk about how much we love San Angelo and, what a quality city we have. And I think this just goes to show that we do. It's not a program we implement after the fact. We have it ongoing. So thank you, Chief.
Yes,
Thank you from all of
And
us.
it was very forward-thinking of the individuals that put this together. I mean, I was looking at the item this morning, thinking about, we were pretty much ahead of the game, I think, so, thank you.
Chief Howard, thank you very much.
ma'am.
We will now move into, you want to go ahead and have a motion to approve those two items, Billy, if you would?
Yes, Mayor. I make a motion that we approve item H and item I on the consent agenda.
And a second by Lane Carter. Any public comment on these items? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0 on item H and I. We will move to item O, consider authorizing a memorandum of understanding with People Fund, a community development financial institution for the administration of financial assistance in the form of grants to eligible businesses in our community. Tina, you're on.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mayor.
Good morning, Tina. I guess my first question is, I'm not familiar with People Fund, so can you tell me a little bit about it, who their clients are, because it looks like we're going to be entrusting them with a pretty substantial amount of money to manage for the city of San Angelo. And I'd, like to know who they are, whether or not they're local, and do we know any other organizations that they have managed funds for?
Yes, ma'am. People Fund is a nonprofit community development financial institution based out of Austin, Texas. They're in the business of running grant programs, and so that's why we selected them. We were put in touch with them by the Small Business Development Center here in San Angelo. And they have done this program with several other cities, including El Paso, Fort Worth, Victoria, Eagle Pass. They've done it extensively, so yes, they do have quite a background in running these programs.
So Tina, how do their services differ from our San Angelo Area Foundation services?
I am not sure about that, Ms. DeWitt. I did reach out to the San Angelo Area Foundation yesterday, and I'm waiting for a call back from them. But we did reach out to 2 other local organizations who might have been equipped to facilitate a program like this, and they just said they don't have the resources available for a program this big.
Okay. Well, and the reason that question is important to me, I think we emphasize a lot because I'm sure that this company has an administrative service charge. And I just wondered if there was a local organization that could do it so we could keep the administrative dollars in San Angelo rather than somewhere else. So, but the Area Foundation, we don't know whether or not they can
Oh, ma'am,
provide
like
these
I said,
services.
I did call them yesterday based on that question, and I'm waiting for a call back.
I would say the following, that the Area Foundation is a foundation that grants for specific programming and nonprofits. This, I believe, is business community, not a nonprofit. So the difference is the Area Foundation does not support businesses. They support nonprofits and in programming of those nonprofits.
And I would also say that there is an expiration on these grant dollars, so this is a program we're going to have to get up and running very quickly, and so that might also inhibit the resources that would be available from another group here in town. You did mention an administrative service fee. People Fund, in the past, the agreements that we've looked at, they do charge $125 per grant, so it's a flat fee.
Oh, it's a flat fee, okay, all right. And Tina, do we know how much money they will be managing for us that will be available to small businesses? Is that something we can share or?
Yes. We have approximately $750,000 that we've earmarked for this and sent to the state as part of our plan for spending. And so within that, obviously, will come out the fee for the People Fund as well. But we expect to have approximately that amount to make grants to small businesses.
Okay.
Where did that $700,000 come from?
That comes from the Coronavirus Relief Fund grant. So the city was
It's not out of the
granted,
general fund, and we're not
No, ma'am. The city was granted about $5.5 million from the state. And so with that, 25% of that amount is allowed to be used for programs like this and other things. The other 75% had to be spent on medical or public safety or health issues.
So, how quickly do we have to spend this money? Is there a deadline that we have to get this money distributed?
Yes, we need to have the MOU in place and executed prior to December 15th in order to facilitate the program.
Is it December 15th the deadline for submitting the grant applications for these businesses, or just for us having
For us
the
to execute
MOU
the
in
agreement
place?
with People Fund.
And then what is the deadline for submission for these businesses for these grants?
We haven't worked that out. That'll be part of the MOU with People Fund. We're expecting it to be about 3 to 4 months. And of course, we'll work with Brian Groves in the Public Information Office to get the word out and make sure that our citizens are fully aware of their opportunity to come apply for these grants.
Is Dave Erickson and his group helping on this effort? Because that seems to be down the road of kind of what they do.
We will absolutely reach out to him as well as the chamber to execute any kind of publicity that we can and get the word out to those small businesses that they deal with. And as well with the Area Foundation, they do deal with nonprofits, but some of those organizations may also be eligible, so we reach out to them as well and make sure they're aware of the program.
Thank you, Tina.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions from any council members for Tina? If not, Billie, I'll entertain a motion from you.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve item O on the consent agenda.
And a second? A second by Lucy. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. With that, that concludes the consent agenda, and we will now move into our regular agenda. Comments regarding items on the regular agenda may be made by the public when each item is discussed as outlined above. Applicants, proponents, and appellants are exempted from the time limit above and must limit their remarks to less than 5 minutes. Item A is consider approving a change order to the AVE.P Stormwater Detention Basin Construction Agreement with Darnell Construction, increasing the total contract amount from $1,550,145 to $1,793,137, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute all related documents. Lance, you're on.
Morning, Council. Lance Overstreet, Engineering Services. Today, I'm here to talk about AVE.P and the pond and some of the difficulties that we have encountered in the construction of that were unforeseen. And as you guys well know, that project is currently in construction. The construction is tracking on schedule.
And what's that schedule?
Yes, ma'am. That was a 540-day work day contract, which actually is about 18 months, but because they're not working on the weekends, it actually comes up to about 24 months. And so they are actually considerably ahead of schedule. The utilities have been relocated. The pond shaping and excavation has actually been completed. We're now constructing the actual structures of the retaining wall and the outfall, and also too working on the street right there at La Cruz. And so that is the areas that we have actually come across a few things that we're needing you guys to consider today. Otherwise, the project has gone very well. Up to date, we have only spent about $20,000 or $30,000 of contingency, and those items that we have actually expended it upon were, as they began to excavate the pond, they found some concrete piles that were in there that had to be removed, as well as a couple of concrete slabs from older construction that had been there. And so to date, we've really been tracking very well on the contingency. But as you will see as we progress through this, I'll kind of explain what we've encountered and why we're here today asking for this change order. So this is a picture of where the retaining wall is supposed to be. And as you can see, there is a lot of water in the bottom of that hole. It's not supposed to be there. This is groundwater that we have encountered that was not on any of the original geotechnical investigations, nor was it on any of the design considerations. And so at the bottom of the retaining wall, about 2 to 3 feet below where the retaining wall surface is and the pond is, we actually have a foundation that we have to construct there to hold that retaining wall up and provide that strength. And in order to put that on there, we have to actually be able to compact that soil and make it to where the soil can hold that retaining wall to prevent it from tipping and falling over. Well, as you can see, the groundwater that we have encountered in that hole is something that is continuing to just leach in. And so we can't get the compaction, we can't do the construction with that groundwater there. And so this is one of the items that we have encountered. Additionally, what we have encountered is, as we shaped the pond and had a couple of rains a few weeks ago, you can see that here on the outfall from the street right above the pond, you can kind of see the rills or the erosion that has occurred there at that street and the side of the pond. And a lot of that is because of the way the curb is there. A lot of it is also, too, because there's been some little bit of grading changes that have occurred with the construction of Intertel's building. And so we're seeing a lot of erosion occurring at the top of that pond. One of the other items that we're looking at doing is actually redoing the curbs, focusing where that water is going to run off in that little cul-de-sac area. And then we will actually then create a flume that will take that into the pond, so that way we don't have this erosion issue going on in the pond. And so those are the two main items that we have kind of encountered. One other item that we encountered is when we started taking the existing street out of La Cruz, we anticipated that it would have actually had the normal structure under it of a street, but we found that substructure and the subgrade was in pretty bad shape. And so we're actually needing to do some stabilization of that subgrade to support that roadway, especially with the traffic that's going to be there and with the outfall and the water that's going to be there. All of those things are going to be a part of this change order.
Talk a little bit about the erosion issue and how that really was something that couldn't be predicted because it was done on an adjoining property, which was not something we reviewed. So it came as something that couldn't be addressed.
So prior to Intertel and the pond work, what happened is the water that came out of that roadway actually kind of split, and part of it ran through Intertel's property, part of it ran into the pond. And so as the pond was being designed, of course, all the stuff what happened at Intertel kind of at the same time. And so some of what Intertel did in their grading was that they either could have run that water through their site into the roadway, or they could change that and run it to the pond. And so part of the grading that they did actually pushed some of that water into the pond, which they had the legal right to do that, to grade it. It was technically the city's water coming from the city street. And so it just wasn't expected to have the kind of the concentrated effect that it did in that area. And so it wasn't really considered at that time to be enough to really look at. But as we have seen through the pictures, it's something that if we don't deal with now, it's just going to continue to erode that side of it. It's going to take that silt, fill the pond. It's going to create more maintenance issues. And it's just something that we can fix now while the contractor is there doing the work, doing the concrete, rather than having to come back through and try to fix that at a later date. So the three things that this is looking at doing is the groundwater. What we're proposing to do is actually to over-excavate that, dig the hole a little deeper. And you could probably ask, well, isn't that going to put more water in the hole? Yes, it will. It will actually require us to over-excavate, put pumps in there, pump the water out, and then we're going to actually be putting a fabric layer and cobble in there to actually support the structure of the wall. And then this way, then we can put the wall on top of that, and this way the substructure is there. It's strong enough to handle that wall, hold that up. You know, it's that whole idea of you can build your house on rocks or you can build your house on sand. Well, we're going to build that wall on rocks and make it work. And so the erosion rills, as I mentioned, we're going to do some changes to the curb, add some concrete and a flume down there. That should solve that. And then the poor soils that we encountered when we pulled back La Cruz, we're going to lime stabilize that, which is something that's very common here in San Angelo. Most of our streets, when we put streets in, have to have a test to determine if we do some lime stabilization or concrete stabilization. And so the several items that we're looking at, here's the dollar value of those. The groundwater and the wall, that changes about $126,000. The erosion rills and concrete, it's about $85,000, and the stabilization is $22,000. Where it gets interesting is that we only had about $160,000 of contingency for this project. And as I mentioned, we had spent around $30,000 of it already, so we have $127,922 available. The total price tag of these is going to exceed what we have in terms of our contingency. We are actually right now looking at being about $106,000 short of what we have budgeted for the contingency of this project. Usually when we choose the dollar value for our contingency. We pick a value of about 5%. That's kind of an industry standard. It is an average, knowing that there are some projects that may need more, there are some projects that may need less. We can modify this contract up to 25%, which we're not even getting anywhere close to. But we have kind of run into a situation where the contingency that we set aside initially is not going to be enough to fund this project. And so the two things that we're looking at from council today is that, one, the dollar value of the change order requires that we come to you guys. In addition to it, we have the funding gap that we need to discuss. And so when we got with city officials, fourth floor, things like that, there is a funding source option through the operations department. It is something, though, that will actually cause some delays in some other planned projects because they have a set budget that has been approved for this year, and this would be something that's above and beyond that budget. One thing that was mentioned is that there is some sales tax surplus, and that this project could potentially utilize some of that sales tax surplus. The history of this project, just so you guys know, it was actually approved and budgeted 6 or 7 years ago. And it was done through an account that does not have any funds in it right now. And so the fact of what it was originally budgeted for was in that $2.1 million to $2.5 million. We actually have constructed this project without having to come back and get additional funds, which typically, if you have a 6 or 7 year delay from the time something is funded until the time it goes to construction, you can almost anticipate that there's going to be additional costs. We have actually been able to really work hard to keep that cost down. And so I think the fact that we're $100,000 short, give or take, is pretty amazing considering it was, budgeted 6 or 7 years ago. And so that's the two things that we kind of need you guys to consider today is one, discussion on how we fund this, and then two, the approval of the change order so that we can complete the pond and bring the benefit to the residents there at Avenue-P.
Obviously, this project is an important project, and it's something that homeowners have had to live with some drainage issues for a long time, so there's unquestionably a need for we need to find the additional money to finance this. My first question would be, okay, so we're going to use all of our contingency money on this specific issue. It's hard to project what other issues might come up, but is there concerns knowing this issue that other issues down the road are going to exist and we're going to need to relook at the dollars again?
That Mayor, would always be a possibility. At this point, we have moved the project along far enough that it would have to be something that's just totally out of the ordinary. The excavation has been done, and essentially we're at a point where we're just waiting for the change order to complete the construction. And so we are not anticipating that anything new is going to come up. I can't 100% say because we don't have that crystal ball that something may rear its head that we aren't aware of. But at this time, we're pretty confident that it will not. If it were, we would have to then potentially come back to some other funding option, and that would just kind of depend on what those dollar values are. But in this particular instance with this project, it would be very minimal or rare that we think we would have to come back again to you guys.
Well, I do believe over a 6 or 7 year period that incremental costs would obviously come about, but you made a statement that probably needs some clarification. One is that the money was in an account at the point in time this was approved, but that account no longer has money in it. Talk about that.
Sure. I think I would probably ask Tina to come up. I believe it may have been a 504 account, might have been the designation. The money's still there, yes.
It may not be in that account. The money for
Yes, the money for the project exists. It's
You have
just
to
that
make that clear because
Yes.
that statement might
Sure.
concern some.
It's just the account that originally came from is not one that I believe has additional funds in it for us to access, and so.
Part of the funding for the project was accounted for in Fund 502, which is our capital projects fund, and the rest was in the stormwater fund. If he's saying there's no budget available, it would be just because it's been encumbered for this project already. And so with that, the additional $100,000 would be on top of what's already been encumbered.
I'm a big believer we need to finance this, and I strongly think we should take our excess sales tax revenue. It's one of the reasons I believe we plan conservatively when we make a budget so that we can have some excess monies for things like this that come up that require funding without negatively impacting anything else in the budget or any of the other accounts. So I'm going to ask if other city council members have questions or comments concerning this item.
Mayor?
Harry, just one second,
Oh,
Billie.
go ahead.
Harry?
Yes, of course, council knows as well as the citizens know that this is a project that I've been working on since right after I got sworn in. I'd like to get to the spot where we're complete on this, do a ribbon cutting, celebrate with the citizens on Avenue P in that particular area. So I'd like to move forward with this in any way that we can figure out how to finance it, just to make sure that it's done in the right way. We already know from speaking to some of the citizens down there that this is working already. I'd like to see the final product. I'd just like to know when we're going to get to that spot where we're completely done. Lance, you got a date?
I think a lot of that's going to depend on how quickly we can get this change order processed and get them the green light to go, so.
Well, I would say that it's this project, if I remember right, many citizens say that this has been a conversation for 25, 30, 50 years. So I will say that this has been a big conversation for a long time. Billie, please.
Yes, and I just want to echo, I support this Avenue P project 100%, and I know we can't undo the past, but, I was just wondering as I was studying this, some of the things we've encountered, such as the contamination in the ground when we first got started and, the miscalculation on the grading that needed to be done. I just remember those things. And, I just wondered if some of those things could have been detected, like this groundwater thing, when we were doing the engineering design. But
Sure.
that's past and gone, and I
Yes.
recognize we can't go back and do this. But the reason I wanted to say something is because when we take some of the funds from the Sunset Lake dredging, that's an area that I have gotten calls about concerning because it's in pretty bad shape. I drive by it periodically, and it's in pretty bad shape. So I just wonder, is there enough sales tax surplus so that we don't have to use for this, so that we don't, and that may be a Tina question, so that we don't have to take money from that Sunset Lake dredging, and we could go ahead with that as well?
I don't support at all taking the money from the sunset dredging. I think that would be the worst mistake we could make. There is excess sales tax money. We'll get a bigger picture on it later on, but there is enough to fund the almost $7,000. And so we're not hurting anybody or any project at this point because those funds are not committed. So it's a source of revenue that we can use for this, and I think I strongly support that we do that and move this thing forward.
Surely it wouldn't be taking money away from just the Sunset Lake. It would be taking the money away from every project that's downstream from that also. So I'm in favor with sales tax also.
All right, Tina, go ahead.
I'll let Tina answer on the tax, and then I'll get back to your engineering question.
As the mayor said, she's well aware that we do have this excess sales tax available to cover this. I just wanted to make a quick comment. We do have a budget amendment later on the agenda. I don't know, city clerk, city attorney, if it would be okay to add this as a verbal addition to the budget amendment? Or would it have to be
Second reading, is it gonna be second reading or first reading?
first reading?
We can add it on second reading.
Okay.
I prefer to have it now.
So that way that they have the funds available more quickly.
All right, so what we'll do is make a motion. Would someone like to make the motion to use $107,000 of the excess sales tax revenue to fund this Avenue P financial need?
I make that motion, Mayor.
Okay, Billie, thank you. And a second by Harry. Any public comment? Yes, please.
I do believe, Teresa, that we also have to do the change order as well, not just the approving the amount for the sales tax, but also the change order. Okay.
But we don't do that on council. The motion you need from us is simply the financing. Or do we do two motions, one for the number and two for the change order? So, Billie, if you would can we incorporate that in one motion? So Billie, if
Yeah,
you
the
could
item
amend.
is- The item is to approve the change order as well as to allocate the funding.
Yes, so Billie, if you would just add that to your motion.
Okay. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the change order and that we allocate the money to fund this from the sales tax surplus.
All right, and then that is a second from Harry. Once again, I'll ask for any public comment. With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Lance.
Thanks, Lance.
Item B is consider resolution nominating W&W AVE.P Steel LLC to the Office of the Governor, Economic Development and Tourism, EDT, through the Economic Development Bank for designation as an enterprise project pursuant to the Texas Enterprise Zone Act. Shannon, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor. Shannon Scott, Business Retention and Expansion Coordinator for the city. I also have with me today Jansen Gibbons with Ryan Incorporated, and he's going to be representing W&W AVE.P Steel. So we want to give a little background information on the company. So W&W Steel was founded in 1945, with AVE.P Steel being founded in 1909. So they now combine for nearly 186 years of experience in the construction industry. And as you might all recall, they actually are the entity that acquired Hirschfeld Steel back in 2018. So currently, they employ 350 people in San Angelo. So they are an industry leader in the fabricating structural steel industry for stadiums, airports, bridges, and other large commercial projects. So they offer turnkey design solutions, fabrication capabilities, and erection for these facilities. So their projects span the entire United States, including the AT&T Stadium, Madison Square Garden, and the Chesapeake Energy area. So just a little background on the Enterprise Zone program. It is a state program that is available to all of the Texas businesses that deploy new capital investment and create and/or retain jobs in the local community. So the local community must nominate a company as an enterprise project to the governor's office. So per year, there are 105 designations. And we are hoping to get this in for the December 1st application round. So the benefit of this program is $2,500 per qualified full-time employee for up to 500 jobs for a total potential refund of $1.25 million. So the benefit actually comes from state sales tax funds, so therefore there is no fiscal impact on the city. So W&W AVE.P Steel's projection is a capital investment of up to $10 million over the next 5 years. And that investment will consist of new cutting machinery, robotic painting equipment, and other manufacturing equipment to support their operations. So with that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions as well as Jansen, but essentially we are asking for the blessing from the city in order to designate W&W AVE.P Steel as an enterprise zone.
Do we have any other applications from any other companies in the city of San Angelo?
As far as I know, no, ma'am.
Okay. Do I have questions from other city council members concerning this item? Okay, then with that, I would need a motion for approval, a motion by Lane Carter and a second by Lucy. Do we have public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item C, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending Chapter 6, Fire and Rescue, Article 6.05, ambulances and ambulance companies allowing for private ambulances. And I think Fire Chief Brian Dunn is here for this presentation.
Morning, Mayor, Council. Brian Dunn, Fire Chief of the City of San Angelo. What I'm bringing before you this morning is asking you to amend the ordinance to allow private ambulance service in the City of San Angelo to do non-emergency transports between the doctor's offices, facilities. With the acquisition of Community by Shannon, the transports between these entities and the other things has just skyrocketed. And right now, previously we were probably doing about 600 transports a year for revenue for us about $150,000. These are the lowest, the reimbursed stuff by Medicare, Medicaid, and that's what most of these transports are. So with the acquisition of Community Hospital, they are blowing up and we can only do so many at a time because we
Describe
can't.
that blowing up, for what reason?
Well, because they're moving patients back and forth between the hospitals, and you got new buildings coming online. I believe that Shannon facility that's going in out there by Rio Concho West, they're already calling us, asking about lining up transports on a daily basis. And because of these things coming in, we can only do so many non-emergency transports at a time because we have to have the things remaining in service for emergency transports. Because, I mean, yesterday, I think I had 4 ambulances go out in emergency in a 6-minute period. I mean, it is just crazy. And especially with COVID right now, we are getting run over. So this ordinance has been in place for several decades, at least since 1979 when the fire department took over the ambulances, probably since 1959 when the ordinance was written, and there was one private service in the city prior up to 1979. So what we're asking is that you allow us to have some private companies come in to do these transports and take that burden off of us. Because right now, you know, as I come to council like the previous year, we are already setting in the range where we almost need a 7th ambulance. What I was seeing the other day was from that couple-month period since this has taken over, it's blown up to like another 2,000 plus runs. So at the rate they're going. So you would want private ambulance service to come in and do these kind of transports. They don't have to staff those ambulances with as high a level capability as we carry, nor the emergency equipment that we carry. So they can do these probably more efficiently than we can for that lower level of care.
We have companies in mind that are ready to start doing this?
I had a meeting with Shannon, and they have one transport company that works for them that wants to come in. Lubbock called me, Eaton called me. So there are companies that are, as soon as this passes probably, if y'all pass it, they will be calling me.
Okay, so those are lined up.
I just want to make sure we emphasize they will not be doing emergency transports.
No, they will not be doing 911 or
And that's gonna be-
emergency stuff.
that's
That
gonna
is
be
still
transfers.
strictly us, just non-emergent transports. So I'll give you an example. The other night I had to go to the hospital to see somebody at 11:30 at night, and I had 2 ambulances sitting there. I go, "What are you doing?" They go, "We did a transport," and we got 3 more stacked up waiting at midnight. That's how many are coming through. So, and I can look on the deal, and they're coming through fast and furious. And you know, we're not going to take 4 ambulances out of service to do non-emergent transports and only leave 2 in service for emergency runs. So,
Okay, so this existing ordinance has been in place, you think, since 1959, have we not?
I think so.
Or call it 59, 79?
79 is when the fire department took over the ambulances, and I know for a fact that they have not been allowed to do inter-city transports since that time.
Okay. Do I have questions? Billie, you have a question?
Yes. Good morning, Chief Dunn.
Good morning.
My question was around any liability for the city. I know I read in the information that the companies would be required to have a certificate of insurance, but does that certificate of insurance protect the city against potential lawsuits?
I'll defer that to THERESA.
On these kinds of emergency services, we have very little risk of liability anyway, but all of our certificates of insurance, we require the city be listed as an additional insured to ensure that any harm that comes that we might be held responsible for, that insurance policy would cover.
Okay, thank you.
We wouldn't be touching these patients, so, I mean.
But you know, in this day and time of so much, you know, we're a litigious society, and if somebody can be sued, they are going to be sued. So that's why I just wondered what protection the city had, you know, if we go this way. Because I support this. I understand the need, and I have heard about somebody needing, you know, a non-emergency transport.
And they're waiting on us because we're out on emergency runs.
Exactly. And so it's like, you know, I couldn't even get an ambulance, you know, and this needed to happen, but it wasn't an emergency. So, you know, I think that is, you know, a reality.
Harry, do you have any questions or comments?
And a quick, Brian, who regulates these people? Who supervises it?
The Department of State Health Services is who they ultimately answer to, the same people that we answer to.
We want a minimum base standard of something acceptable, and somebody coming in, we want to know it's covered. I'm with Billy, kind of that falls along with our liability.
And we did put a little minimum standard in there, and then according to DSHS certifications and standards.
Thank you.
Harry, did you have any questions?
I just want to make a comment, and it's basically along what Tom and Billy have already said, is there's a reason in 1979 that we went away from private ambulances. And even though I can see the need right at this moment for transporting because of the number of people that are in the hospital and the need to do this, I don't think this is a long-term solution. I really don't think in 6 months you're going to need this many. So I don't know where we're going to be in 6 months in order to change this ordinance back. I believe that the professionals, and I say that because I've been an EMT, and I've rode the ambulance, so I know this, but I'm talking about the fire department. There's a reason that we depend on your particular guys and gals to do what they do. I know that these other ambulance services still have to be certified and go through that, but I think the citizens are much more comfortable with your people, so I'm not sure that how long term we want this to happen.
Well, it's non-emergency transfers, and part of the issue, as Chief Dunn has said, is that Shannon is building facilities all around the city. We don't have just one central campus where everybody funnels, everything is brought to one central campus. There's many campuses. So a non-emergency, it seems like the right thing to do, and I'm very strongly supporting of this change in the ordinance.
And I would agree with that, Councilman. So in the emergency realm, our average response time is right around 5 minutes, which is very quick. But for these transports that require a much far lower level of care than having 2 paramedics with all the equipment that we carry on there, basically most of these people just need to go either from this hospital to this hospital because they're not going to do neurological work over here, or this patient is bedfast at a nursing home and he needs to go to a doctor's appointment and then go back. They're basically, but they can't go on a taxi. They have to go on a stretcher in the back of an ambulance. That is what a lot of these transports are. Not emergent transports, and you're right. There's a reason why we ended up with that in 1979, and as many of these other cities that had a private, the cities end up taking them over because resources aren't dedicated to delivering emergency services versus this non-emergent transport. Now, most cities our size have private transport companies in there. Midland, Odessa, Abilene, these places have these in here and most of the emergency services don't do these type of transports.
Yes, Daniel.
Chief, also, even prior to COVID-19, we were already seeing our numbers go up anyway.
We were seeing them go up from this,
So we're
yeah.
seeing more and more emergency transports as well, so it's not.
Yeah, we're still making, our run volume's still going up 400 to 600 a year on that side of things. So the revenue part was, and those runs are billed at a much higher level than the Medicare reimbursed non-emergent transports. So we're going to go past those in one year, one setting.
Lane, do you have any comments or questions for Brian?
Well, I agree with only letting them do the non-emergent, absolutely. But this is going to also have a channel for, like you said, Shannon, to be able to do that from within, because right now, like you said, they're building facilities all over the place. And if they wanted to have their own ground med, then they can do that to go in between their own facilities and take that responsibility away from the city, frees up our time, because whenever I worked in the ER, I remember seeing those EMTs come in, not emergent, and hearing it over the comms, saying there's more out there. And I'm thinking to myself, well, we've got 2 right here, where's the rest? And how fast are they going to get to? So absolutely, I'm in agreement.
They've been stacking up fast.
Lucy?
No, I just want to agree with what everyone has stated, and I'm very much in support of it. And I think that the the program, this program that you're talking about is going to be very beneficial to the community.
Well, it'll be beneficial to the people that need the transports and the hospital, because the hospital's sitting there waiting for these patients to get to their next destination, be it a cath lab or an x-ray or an MRI somewhere else that we can't get to, and they may have a time, say this patient that's here needs to be doing an MRI at 2 o'clock, but we get inundated with emergency runs. Well, we ain't gonna make it, and that patient's not gonna make that 2 o'clock appointment. That's part of the issue too, is that we are not capable with the amount they're having to handle these.
Okay. Billie has a comment, and then Tommy does as well. So I'm going to have Billie make your comment or your question, and then Tommy, you'll be on right after her, okay?
Okay. My question is, well, a couple, but one is a yes or no. I'm thinking that if we, make this contract with private carriers, there would be a time frame, such as a year or 2 years or something like that. Is that correct?
There, in the ordinance, I believe it's written they have to renew their permit or license, whatever we called it, every year.
Okay.
And in there, we've written some language that if they're derelict in taking care of the public, we limit it to 4 companies so they don't cannibalize or run over each other. So if they're not doing what they're supposed to, you can pull their permit and let another company come in here.
So by making this change, do we have to have private carriers, or could we have them as needed? And, I asked that question to the point Harry made. If, things slow down and, they aren't able to make the profit or whatever they're looking for to stay in business, would we have to, based on the change that we would be looking at today, would we have to have at least one private carrier, or can we only get them as needed?
Well, no, they've got to, as needed. They're not going to set up a base of business in San Angelo on an as-needed basis. They're either going to have a business model that works or they're not going to come here.
No,
So-
but I'm thinking we have a contract for a year, or whatever that is.
Well, when you say contract, basically, we're just allowing them to operate within the city limits. There's no.
They don't
say
report
if I'm
to
wrong,
us,
there's
they
not
get a
really
permit.
contract with the city. They're just allowed to operate within the city
A
limits.
license.
Okay.
It does say we shall issue 4 licenses, so we can say may issue 4 licenses, and that way we don't have to issue any if we don't want to.
Okay.
If that's the preference, we can make that little tweak to the language.
Again, we've had people ask in the past, we've never got over, in the past, we were always able to handle it. But as our run volume has grown over the years, and you see more and more of this with the hospitals, like I said, Odessa, Midland, they have multiple non-emergency transport carriers there. These people are running back and forth all the time.
Well, remember, this isn't just, and I say it again, I think Daniel made the comment, this isn't just COVID-19 related. This is because our population is growing.
Yeah.
The number of nursing homes is growing. The number of assisted living places is growing. There's now going to be more transfers between Shannon South and Shannon Downtown than there has been. So it's not just a when COVID goes away problem. It's an existing
And we've seen a pretty good uptick in transport to other facilities out of town, too. So, and those take a tremendous amount of time to do.
All right, Tommy?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks, Mayor. I agree with the council, and I would leave it to Theresa to decide whether or not the word may should be inserted within the ordinance. But Mayor, if you're ready, I would make a motion that we approve this item as presented, amending the ordinance to allow for private ambulances.
I accept that motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
Billie will second that. Is there any public comment? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Chief Dunn.
Thank you.
Item D, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending Chapter 8, offenses and nuances. Can I say that right? Nuisances today. These masks get you every time. Okay, Article 8.11, outdoor lighting, Section 8.11.002, outdoor lighting standard to clarify lighting standard measurements. Bob, you're on.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. We're here this morning to clean up some language in the light ordinance. Currently, the ordinance identifies the lighting standard as all outdoor luminaries shall be located, adequately shielded, and directed such that no light shines beyond the boundaries of the property. Unfortunately, the staff were unable to measure that term, no light. And it's virtually impossible for businesses to adhere to that standard. So we're asking to amend the ordinance. We'd like for it to read, any luminaries shall be located, adequately shielded, and directed so as not to produce glare or direct illumination across a bounding property line of such intensity as to create a nuisance.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it?
It does look like nuance. Nuisance or detract from the use of, or enjoyment of adjacent property. All outside lights shall be made up of light source and reflectors so selected that acting together, the light beam is controlled and not directed across any bounding property line above the height of 3 feet. The allowable maximum intensity measured at the property line abutting a residential use shall be 0.5 foot candles. This amendment basically provides staff the ability to measure any violations and not use subjectiveness. So we're asking for approval of the change.
Do I have questions from council for Bob?
This is
Yes,
residential
Wayne?
and commercial?
This would be, yes, sir. Commercial and residential.
Down lighting on a residence, soffit lighting.
Well, it would meet, usually that won't meet the measurement, the 0.5 foot candle measurement usually.
Also, because
Usually
the
what
height isn't so high.
Yeah.
With the commercial.
We are going to ask everyone to shield their lights. I mean, that's standard. The problem is that when someone complains that there's glare or some coming into their property, zero light is impossible for us to measure. So we have to have something for our ordinance, of our code officers to go out there and measure and determine if it's a violation or not. That's what this change does for us.
Do I have other questions for Bob? All right, do I have a motion? Or Tom?
Before we take that motion,
Yes.
don't we have some public comment I'd like to hear?
Oh, is there anyone?
We do have public comment
Well,
today.
usually we have a motion and then public comment. So if you'll make the motion, then we'll open it up for
I'm
public
not going to make the
comment.
motion on this one. I'll let somebody else. I want to hear public comment.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion?
So move.
So moved. And is there a second?
Second.
A second by Billy. Is there any public comment? Come forward, please. You've been waiting for this.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Poppy, and
I'm Shane Bearden.
we're from SMD 5, and we live at 3014 Cumberland Drive. We have been having some light trespass issues from a sports complex that sits behind our home, and we've been having this light trespass issue since February. We and some immediate neighbors of ours on Cumberland have filed complaints with code compliance. It's still, the issues are still unresolved. There's also some homes that have a light trespass issue from the sports complex on Vista del Arroyo and A&M. And I'm not sure if anybody filed formal complaints on those streets or not, but the light trespass is shining on those properties as well. And the light trespass and the glare, it's pretty intense. It lights up the whole backyard. So if you're back there with people and talking to anybody, you can't see their faces. You have to shield your eyes to see people's faces. You trip over things in your yard because you can't see the ground. It shines through the shades even when they're drawn and illuminates the inside of the home. The light also, with blackout curtains, it seeps around the edges and illuminates the room still. We're concerned about the ordinance amendment because I guess they want it sounds like they want it to read that all glare and light trespass must measure 0.5 foot candles or less. And the problem with that is you can't apply that to LED lights, which is the source of the lights at the driving range at the sports complex that's creating the glare and the light trespass. So that's kind of our concern.
Correct. With the old metal halide lights, you could measure that with a
Light
photometer,
Light meter, yeah.
a light meter that measures photopic lumens. With LEDs, they are different and produce a different lumen, which is a scotopic, and that is not measured by a light meter.
So that's kind of, I guess that's why we're here and why code compliance wanted to change the ordinance. And we're just concerned that if they change the ordinance to where properties have to measure 0.5-foot candles or less in order to be, for the ordinance to be enforced, then this light trespass and glare is going to keep going. Other businesses.
Not just us, other businesses, apartment complexes, hotels, I mean, anybody that has a parking lot will not have to abide by this.
Bob, do you want to come forward and make comment relative to their comments and better clarify these issues with city council members?
Yes, we are familiar with the case. It turns out that we did measure, and it was less than 0.5 light candles. We are making the owner shield their light. That is part of the ordinance. That's the first thing we look at. Are they shielding it and keeping it from traveling? I believe that the gentleman that owns that property went to the zoning board, and I think they're making him shield it even further to keep the light trespassing from happening. To answer the question, I'm not I can't talk at at the type of lighting that the gentleman mentioned. I'm not familiar with that, so I'll have to do some research.
Well, LEDs are becoming a very popular form of lighting, so I think if we're talking about relooking at an ordinance, we better understand as part of this ordinance LED, because that's what everybody's going to. They're not going to the old traditional lighting if they're replacing things or building new things. So I think the ordinance needs to incorporate some LED language or conversations, so I think that needs to be done.
We just don't know that if the LED lighting, if our measuring mechanism our tool does not measure that. I don't know that. We'll have to check. I'll have to do some research and find out. And if it does, we can certainly come back to council to ensure that we are addressing the LED type of lighting. I just don't know enough to talk about it right now.
Because I know that property's been there forever, and there's been lighting on that property forever. So the question mark is, why is it more intense or not intense, or what is the change in terms of the impact on the neighborhoods? Because I don't know that there was questions and negativity towards the previous lighting that was there. So I'm kind of confused, but I also know the following. If LED lighting is what most people are putting in on, whether it's hotels or apartment complexes or whatever, we need to better understand the LED issues.
Sure.
Lighting was changed and increased on number on that specific.
Okay, so you're saying it not only went to LED, but they put up additional lights, is that?
Not sure of that, but.
In that particular case, they did have different lighting beyond the permits. They are going to make them adjust, my understanding anyway. And so that should help that neighborhood. But to answer your question, man, we will do some research on the LED type lighting to see if there's any extra language we have to put into the language to cover that, and we'll come back to council for that.
Because I think the current person who's leased that from the city, in his measurement, his current lighting had less distancing to it than the previous lighting that was there. So I'm totally confused about what we're doing here, and I think we're not specific enough and we don't understand enough to really pass a new ordinance.
Right now, we really want to make sure that we have something that we can measure right now and eliminate the standard language of no light. That for sure does not, we can't measure no light. So.
There has to be light. There's always
Exactly.
been light.
So we have to
there.
change the language that says, we're just trying to eliminate that no light language. So Teresa, you want to add?
Yeah, I think that right now there's a conflict within the language of the ordinance where one section says no light and the other says this 0.5-foot candles. This is only first reading, so we do have, our next meeting is not going to be until December 15th, so we do have a period of time where we can go back out and see if there's additional language and then insert that into second reading if we want to move this item along. But I do agree that the way it's written right now is confusing, especially, when you're trying to do enforcement on these light issues.
Okay, so today with the motion and the second, what we would be doing is eliminating the no light in the ordinance, and then we would do further investigation and better understand the impact of LED and other issues that might need to be added to this ordinance change.
Yes, ma'am.
On second reading.
Yes, ma'am.
Does that work for council?
I have a question with the case
Yes, Tom?
with the case that's involved here. Have they, I guess, participated in any of the corrective action we've asked? Have they shielded anything yet?
They took some action. It didn't eliminate the problem, and they have been directed to add additional shielding. So they haven't done that yet. I think they just, my understanding, that they just went to the zoning board, and I believe they were directed to do that. So nothing yet, but I think they're pursuing some changes.
Let me phrase it this way, Bob. If we approve this today, we're giving you a tool to be more specific and more accurate and able to enforce it better, correct?
Yes, sir, we are. Yes, exactly
on it.
right. That's exactly right.
Mayor?
Yes, Billy?
As I understood it from the two people that spoke about this, how it's impacting them, and one of the comments was that, this can be much broader than the particular property that we're talking about. So as we do the research, Bob, and look into it, I think we need to, look beyond just this property to make sure we address in our ordinance the impact of a new parking lot going up, because I think that's what I heard the gentleman say, that, this could be a much broader issue than just this particular property. So if we could take that into consideration, I would
That's what
appreciate
I've asked him to do in case it is a new hotel, a new apartment complex, et cetera, that backs up to a residential neighborhood, whether it's an individual home or whatever. So we need to.
Sure.
Lighting has changed dynamically since this ordinance was created, so I think we need to make sure the ordinance is more reflective of existing lighting standards and what people are using and how it impacts. So there's a motion and a second. We will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Motion passes 7-0. We'll continue to look into the item.
Thank you.
Item E, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending Chapter 10, Traffic Control, Article 10.01, General Provisions amending Section 10.01.013, Pedestrians' Rights and Duties. And Theresa, you're presenting, or, right?
Yes, ma'am, I am presenting.
Okay.
We're trying to get them their phone back. So this ordinance is addressing an issue that we're having along the loop. The intersections along the loop are very, there's a lot of conflict points. There are high speeds, there's stops, and we have issues with pedestrians being in those intersections a lot. So we already have provisions in our Code of Ordinances that addresses pedestrian actions when it comes to our rights-of-way. And we're just adding a section that makes it unlawful for a person to lie, sit, loiter, stand, or solicit in any median in the city, in any intersection, underpass, or under any bridge located along Highway 277, US Highway 67, or Loop 306 within the city of San Angelo. So that will address some of those higher-risk pedestrian areas where people are tending to congregate now.
Did you say 87? You said 67.
67.
Well, what about 87?
I ran this by traffic, so if it needs to be changed.
I mean, 87 and North Bryant Boulevard, or North Bryant Boulevard 87, I would think, and the loop would be an issue, or maybe when you say the loop, that's what you're referring to, but I think we need to be very specific.
It covers the loop, we just don't have anything to North Bryant.
Okay, well, I'll
Yeah,
look
that
at
language
bring it
needs
back.
to be looked at.
Okay, 87. So that's all. This is a very minor change in language, but I think it'll have a big impact in the effect.
I think it will allow for enforcement.
Yes.
That is tough to do right now. And you might talk about, or somebody talked about, individuals underneath the bridge at Chadburn, and, there's that U-turn there, so someone was gonna do the U-turn, and they stopped there to give out money or food or whatever, and here came another car going to do the loop and almost ran into the back of that car because it was stopped, and it shouldn't be stopped, but that's gonna continue to happen unless we ensure that these areas cannot have pedestrians there. So,
Does not limit pedestrians from traveling through the areas,
Yeah.
just from stopping or loitering there.
yeah, can't spend time there to any degree. Does council have questions for Teresa on this item? Lucy has made a motion to approve the item with the re-review and make sure all those locations are correct. Is there a second? Second. A second by Harry. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. We will move into item F, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending Chapter 5, Business and Commerce, Article 5.04, Enter Merchants by amending Section 5.04.003, hours of solicitation. And Teresa, you're on for this one.
Yes, this ordinance change came up at a prior council meeting where a citizen asked us to look at the hours of solicitation. I tasked our ASU intern, Jared Carter, with researching this, and he spent a lot of time doing that and negotiating with me on it. And we came to the agreement that we can make some modifications to the hours of solicitation for door-to-door solicitation. So the ordinance change before you will change the hours of door-to-door solicitation from 9 a.m. to 7:30 p.m.
That's great. I think it will make citizens very happy, and I feel good about this opportunity to amend the ordinance. Do I have questions from council? Tom?
We don't classify, would this affect a food truck in any way?
Oh, no.
Okay, I'm
This
good.
is just people
I
coming
just
to
could
knock
see that
on your
snowball.
door. Oh,
I'm
no,
with
this
you.
is
I like this.
somebody out there selling books, or somebody selling a roofing project, or whatever.
Well, I was curious about the definition of itinerant merchant.
Yeah.
So,
Unless you have a food truck come in your house.
Yeah.
and you know what?
It sounds
wouldn't
kind of
gripe
good,
about
right?
that.
During this lockdown, there's an opportunity, right?
There you go. Be here by 7:29, buddy.
All right, so do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
A motion by Tom, a second by Billy. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. Okay, we will move on to item G, public hearings on proposed annexations and first reading of ordinances annexing into the city of San Angelo by petition of the property owner for the following properties and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute all related documents. 1, 10.480 acres out of the C. Berberich Survey Number 177, Abstract Number 52, generally located south of Loop 306 along Old Stone Drive. And 2, 18.753 acres out of the C. Berberich Survey Number 177, Abstract Number 52, and the H. Zerbach Survey Number 178, Abstract Number 4210, generally located east of the intersection of Clubhouse Lane and Enclave Court. 3, 18.325 acres out of Abstract 8108, Survey 0008, A. Wilkie out of the west one-half of Survey 8, generally located west of the intersection of Dominion Ridge and Coral Way. And 4, 88.936 acres out of Track 2 and Track 3, Block 1, Section 1, Tom Green County Business Park, generally located east of North U.S. Highway 277, north of Tractor Trail. John, you're on. That's a big one.
Thank you. Yeah, we made that as short as possible, if you can believe that. I think what I'll do is go through each one of these. I just have a couple of slides on each, but then I may stop and see if you have questions on each annexation. But we did combine the 4 annexations into one. This first one is Old Stone Ranch. You can see that you recently annexed this front area of the Old Stone Ranch. It's a residential development back in February. And so this is just the next phase of their subdivision. So they're annexing the back part of the subdivision. You'll notice that a case later in the agenda is the rezoning or the zoning of that property as well. So you can see here the proposed plat of the area. The preliminary plat of this has already been approved. And so it's just a series of steps to annex the property, plat the property, zone the property, in order for it to come into the city limits and be developed under the city's, with city services, water and sewer and all of that. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them on that one, or I can move on to the next.
Does anyone have a question on this particular one? Tommy, do you have a question?
Mayor, I will speak on the zoning of that particular property. I think it'd be more appropriate at that time.
Okay, we'll move forward. Continue, John.
And then the next one is another phase of Bentwood. You can see the red area there on the map is currently outside of the city limits, but it would just be another phase of the Bentwood development. And you can see here basically the map of that area. This one doesn't show, but it'll basically include a street coming in and then a street with lots on both sides of that. Again, similar to the other one, there is a companion rezone or a zoning case to zone that property that you'll be hearing in a little bit. All of these cases are coming first reading today, as well as a required public hearing under the statute, and then they'll come back for second reading in December. Any questions on that one?
Questions from council? Okay, continue.
And this third annexation is in the Dominion Ridge area. It's about 18 acres. Again, it's got a companion rezoning as well. I think the next map may show this a little better. Basically, this is Dominion Ridge, the road. That will be extended into this area, and then multiple roads throughout this area. There will also be another connection out into what is currently undeveloped here, but ultimately all of those roads will interconnect. But immediately as this entire annexation area develops, their only access will be here through Dominion Ridge until they grow out enough for those future road connections to be connected.
So typically, we don't allow projects if there's not two exits, entrance and exits.
There's a maximum number of homes, so you can have a certain number of homes, and off the top of my head, I don't know, that's in the fire code, but once you reach that, they would have to have that secondary access. So, and I don't know off the top of my head how many homes will be in this area, but it may get to the point where as they develop back this way, there may come a point where they do have to punch out that extra street once they exceed that threshold of number of lots.
Gary?
I'll just make a comment. What I don't want to have happen is another Foster Road. So to the mayor's point, really we need to encourage that second access point as early in this project as we can get them to do that.
And I think that they would love to have enough demand for the homes that would be earlier than later. Billie?
John, on the entry exit off of Dominion Ridge, what does Dominion Ridge empty onto? What would be the natural traffic pattern from Dominion Ridge to where?
Well, you can see Dominion Ridge, because it parallels this railroad track here, it is a straight line back here to southwest, so this purple line here is southwest. Of course, once you get out into this neighborhood, there would be multiple ways to get, back up to Southland or other areas. But this development area will access that through that one. I would suspect that most of the traffic might likely stay on Dominion Ridge till you get out to Southwest and then go, wherever you're wanting to go.
We're pouring more traffic onto Southwest. So is it possible? What is the street that you said once they get out a little ways before you get to Southwest, what would be another option?
Well, you can see here, if you come out Dominion Ridge, they could, if they're coming out kind of in this direction, they could come up, looks like Canyon Rim, and kind of make their way up to Southland. If they're going over to, Walmart, Sam's, that kind of area. or they could come out to southwest here if they're going towards the east.
Any other questions from council? Continue.
Well, and I would add, based on that question, as this whole area develops, those streets will continue and ultimately will be multiple connections out, in those directions as well. But those only happen as the growth incrementally moves in that direction. So at some point, you'd be able to get from this neighborhood out, over to like the Highway 67 area in that, towards the west.
Okay, continue. Now, does that conclude 1, 2, and 3?
Yes.
I think we need to do 4 separately, or maybe it doesn't matter, but, okay, just go ahead, continue.
And 4, of course, is the jail or the detention facility out there. You may recall that a couple of years ago, that was disannexed from the city for purposes of a grant. They did not get that grant, and so now the county has requested for the jail and some surrounding portions of property to be annexed back into the city limits. You may note that we are currently under an MOU, a memorandum of understanding with the county, so they are already subject to basically the same zoning rules as if they were in the city limits. We already provide them water and sewer service at the same rates as someone inside the city would pay. So to a large extent, it's almost as if they're still in the city limits, and this just kind of formalizes bringing them back in. But in terms of, regulation or payment of water and sewer fees, all of that, even fire service is provided out there as well already. They are annexing a slightly smaller area than was disannexed. There's some of the 4-H property and the sheriff, I believe a shooting range and some other sheriff property out there that they're leaving out for now, but they are including the jail and the ADAC Recovery Center in this re-annexation. And again, it's on the same schedule as all of the other 3 in terms of the hearing dates and the second reading.
Tom, did you have any questions or comments?
No, the property line works for what everybody needs. We're
Okay.
good.
All right, with that, I would entertain a motion if we could. I suspect we can do item all G at one time, or do I have to do 1, 2, and 3, and 4 separately? Just one. Okay, may I have a motion then to approve item G inclusive of 1, 2, 3, and 4?
So moved.
So moved by Harry. Is there a second? A second by Lane. Any public comment? With none, we'll take a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion passes 7-0. We will move into item H, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving case Z20-14, zoning property to the single-family residential zoning district in connection with an annexation being 10.480 acres located along South Old Stone Drive. John?
Thank you. Again, we just talked about these areas for annexation, and you saw the plat, so I'm going to go through fairly quickly. But this annexation is for about 10 acres for single-family residential development. Just a little bit closer look here. Again, just to the north has already been zoned single-family. You've got part of Bentwood over here that's zoned single-family. We do have some existing single-family zoning up at the front, but mostly this frontage is all commercial zoning. In fact, I believe these areas are being looked at for rezoning to commercial as well. So you'll have commercial up on 306 with the long-term plan is for all of that to be residential back behind it. I will note that you've got Crystal Point here in Bentwood. Ultimately, you can see this blue line. That will be connected through and provide another access into and out of this area. But initially, it will only be this road that comes in from Loop 306 until the development gets down and the adjacent properties develop to extend that road. We did send out our notices to the surrounding property owners, did not receive any responses in favor or in opposition. Described that they do have a preliminary plat which was approved that includes both Section 1 and 2. And once this annexation and zoning goes through, they'll be coming back with the final plat to create those lots. And again, here's the graphic, and you can see that Crystal Point Road there that they will build. But again, until their adjacent properties develop and those properties build the road, it will incrementally develop over time. It does match the recommendations of the comprehensive plan, and it is dependent on the sewer capacity expansion project that's running from the lake back into town. And so once that's in place, that will allow this to continue to develop. Staff does recommend approval, as did the Planning Commission unanimously at their October meeting. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do I have questions from council?
Mayor, I have a question.
Let me go
couple
ahead.
Questions.
Tommy, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. John, you referenced a couple of things that I want to maybe flesh out a little bit more. The first thing was the extension at some point in time of Crystal Point. Would that likely go to the west towards the Bentwood area before it would go back to the east towards Foster Road?
My guess would be yes, although that really depends on the adjacent properties. So if this property to the west develops first, then that would extend the connection towards Bentwood. But if these properties come in earlier, you might get it connecting out towards Foster Road first. It really just depends on the timing of when those individual property owners choose to develop.
Well, then, if it just so happened that it did go back to the east, I will echo what Harry referenced earlier. We don't need to be putting any more traffic on Foster Road than absolutely necessary. That is becoming problematic, especially with the low water crossing, and now with potential development out there. That's going to become more critical. So we'll have to keep that moved up on our to-do list of working on that fix, if you want to call it that, across that low water area there on Foster Road. The other thing you referenced there at the very end, John, about the sewer capacity expansion project. Would this not be developed until that is in place and ready to be extended, or would it start before the sewer capacity project is complete?
I believe that this project, they may be developing some of those lots on septic systems prior to the sewer getting there, with the idea that they could then switch over to sewer, when those lines get in place.
So that would then go back to, like, I think as we talked on the section immediately north of this, with no right now sewer connection, when they're within 200 feet of a sewer line, they're going to be required to connect. Is that accurate?
I believe that there's a development agreement in place that would allow these to use their septic systems until such time as they need to be replaced, but at that point they would have to connect. So they wouldn't have to connect immediately, but they wouldn't be allowed to permit and install a new septic system, if the initial one starts to fail or needs to be replaced.
And I would request, Julia, as we make a note for, let's just say for the minutes, that we make it clear that the city then is not responsible for the extension, that the homeowner, lot owner, is going to be the one required to pay for that sewer. Because I've got another area in my district that there's been some misunderstanding as to whose responsibility it is for the cost of the sewer. So, Mayor, with that being said, and with appropriate notation in our minutes so that it is clear from the very outset and beginning that they will be required to pay for that extension when in fact it does become necessary, I'd move approval of item H as presented.
Is there a motion? May I have a second?
Second.
A second by Tom. Any public comment? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. We'll move on to item I, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving case Z20-15, zoning property to the single-family residential zoning district in connection with an annexation being 18.753 acres located east of the intersection of Clubhouse Lane and Enclave Street. John?
Thank you. Again, this is the Bentwood expansion that was corresponding to that recent annexation. This also is a request to zone single-family residential. That does match the designation in our comprehensive plan of neighborhood, and it's consistent with everything around it. We did send out our notices, received 3 in favor. I think that's actually up to 5 in favor now, with 1 opposed. And you can see the one opposition is right there. They're just concerned about undeveloped land adjacent to them being developed and increasing traffic, taking away open space, kind of the similar concern of people who move right to the edge of town and then don't want more development to go beyond them. Again, it's the logical extension planned as part of the master plan for the Bentwood area. The streets will continue to build out as we've talked about at the edge of town. That's how our transportation system builds out, is as each developer builds their roads, it ultimately adds up to a connected system. Staff does recommend approval, as did the Planning Commission unanimously. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do I have questions from council? With none, do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Tom made a motion, Harry seconded it, and we now ask for public comment if there is any. And with none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Item J, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving case Z20-17, zoning property to the single-family residential zoning district in connection with an annexation being 18.325 acres located west of the intersection of Dominion Ridge and Coral Way. John?
Thank you. Again, John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. This is the third and final zoning related to an annexation. It's also a rezoning to, or a zoning to single-family residential of about 18 acres, which would represent, according to their current plans, about 51 new single-family lots. This is the larger area. You'll see that this is a little bit bigger. The annexation area is something like that, but this is their entire plan. And you can see, as I mentioned, Dominion Ridge will continue and will also continue into future development in that direction. Here's this other road that I was talking about, which will also continue and into the currently undeveloped area, both to the east and west. So, and then finally, a third street that will continue to the north. So you can see as this area completely develops, those streets will continue out to create that interconnected system. Again, this is a slightly smaller piece of that entire planned development area of about 18 acres. It is proposed for single family. You can see that most of the surrounding area is also single family, and it does match our future land use designation of neighborhood. We sent out our notices to the surrounding property owners, did not receive any responses in favor or in opposition. And staff does recommend approval, as did the Planning Commission unanimously.
Do I have questions for John from anyone on council?
Mayor, I move to approve as presented.
Billy, and a second by Lucy. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
We'll move to the last item on the regular agenda, item K. First public hearing and introduction of an ordinance amending the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2020 and ending September 30th, 2021 for capital items, donation, grants, and projects.
Thank you, Mayor Tina Deersky, Director of Finance. We have a few budget amendments for you today, and we'll finish up with our carryovers that we do every year after year end. The first budget amendment is for police donations. The donations were from Back the Badge and West Texas Four-Wheel and Off-Road. Those donations were approved by council in the past, but now we're creating the budget so that they can use those funds. The fire department has a grant that they received through the COVID funding for $96,000. We have had that money in hand for several months. We are now going to budget that money so that they can use it to assist with the purchase of an ambulance. Insurance proceeds for building damage. The risk pool will recover this from the Texas Municipal League's intergovernmental risk pool. And then there's a deductible that will be covered through the risk fund. Equipment replacement for stormwater. They're asking to budget $345,000 from Fund 240's fund balance for the replacement of stormwater equipment. And this is the beginning of our carryovers. The first one is for city clerk, a request to carry over $91,000 in savings from this year to next year for the 2020 census in case we have a redistricting, and for records retention software. Billing and receipts is carrying over $7,000 for completion of our payment processor. Traffic is requesting to carry over $15,000 for signal support material. Human Resources is carrying over $12,000 for employee service awards. Code compliance, $1,200 for a safety vest. The $90,000 that we have committed for the infill development that needs to be carried over to complete those obligations. Social Services is carrying over $6,000 for indigent care. And then the fire department is carrying over $104,000 for technology upgrades. Texas Bank Sports Complex requesting to carry over $24,000 for completion of a storage building. Stormwater, $425 for a vehicle upfit, pardon me, is for a vehicle that was purchased, but they haven't completely done all the equipment that needs to be on it. Again, stormwater with a request to carry over $400,000 for the Sunset Lake dredging and various other projects. They do have almost $900,000 set aside, and this will go in addition to that for that Sunset Lake dredging project. And then health insurance is carrying over $11,000 for our employee wellness program. Equipment replacement is requesting to carry over $73,000 for police vehicle upfits, and another almost $7,000 for fire vehicle accessories, and then for hotel occupancy tax, carrying over $61,000 for the remaining 3 months on the CVB's contract.
So all of these items are items that were budgeted in the prior year, but the money wasn't spent or they haven't received the equipment, and so they're being carried over to the new budget, but they're not new expenses, they're just carryovers from the previous. Is that correct?
Right. They're most of the carryovers are projects that were already in progress or processed at year end, and we just haven't completed the actual payment for the services or goods.
Do I have a motion from council to approve the amendments requested for the budget? Harry made and Lane seconded that motion. Is there any public comment? With none, that motion, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. We will now move into closed session. The executive session under the provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, Exceptions to Requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. A, 551.072, deliberations about real property regarding 1, water rights, 2, Block 24, Mills Paw Addition, 3, lands near or adjacent to Red Bluff and Middle Concho Roads, and B, 551.071, consultation with attorney regarding Sheila Andrews. With that, we will now move into closed session. So thank you. It's
12:04.
It's 12:04 p.m. Closed session has adjourned, and so we will move into item 8, follow-up and administrative issues. Consider items discussed in closed session if necessary. Harry, would you like to make some comments?
Yes. Make a motion to authorize the city manager to execute all documents necessary to convey a small, narrow strip of land being the west 6 inches of Lot 1, Block 24, Mill Spa addition to the adjacent property owners, Terry M. Sinclair and Deborah Smith, and enter into a license agreement with Sinclair and Smith for the west 7 foot 6 inches of Lot 1, Block 24, Mill Spot addition, providing for the maintenance of support beams for the wall.
Is that a motion?
That is motion.
And I have a second by Lucy. Are there any public comments to be offered? With none, then we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Item B, consideration of approving various board nominations. Fort Concho Museum Board, Yukio Kuniyuki, SMD 3, to an unexpired term ending January 2021. Sorry, I messed up that name incredibly
Kuniyaki.
really bad. Kuniyaki, sorry. Okay, so do I have a motion for that?
So move.
A motion has been made, a second?
Second.
Second by Tom. No comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Item C, announcements and consideration of future agenda items. Are there any? With none, may I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
So moved, and a second. All in there? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
6-0. Thank you all very much. Have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy family.